Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, I'm taking you on a deep dive into one of the most significant moves in the history of the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, or JMSDF, a move that is sending shockwaves throughout the Indo-Pacific region. In an era where guided missile technology has advanced to the hypersonic level, meaning missiles can travel at speeds greater than Mach 5 and even maneuver to evade radar, these threats are fundamentally changing the face of naval warfare. To counter this looming threat, Japan has decided to go all in, massively overhauling its national defense architecture by giving birth to a new sea monster, officially named the Aegis System Equipped Vessel, or ASEV for short. Imagine a warship so massive, with a displacement exceeding 12,000 tons, larger than any destroyer class Japan has ever possessed. It's so big that many military media outlets around the world are calling it a cruiser rather than a destroyer. This vessel is packed with the most advanced radar technology and the most modern anti-aircraft missiles money can buy. But today, there is a question more important than its sheer size. In an age where cheap drones and high-speed missiles can penetrate air defense systems, will this multi-billion-dollar floating fortress be a strong enough shield, or will it just be a massive, slow-moving target in the eyes of the enemy? Today, we're going to analyze this from every angle. First, we need to understand the geopolitical tipping point that forced Japan to build this ship. Over the past several years, Japan has faced immense pressure from its neighbors. This ranges from North Korea's continuous missile testing, which are becoming longer range and more sophisticated, to China's maritime expansion, accompanied by a new generation of anti-ship guided missiles. Originally, Japan planned to defend itself with the Aegis Ashore system, which is a land-based radar and interceptor missile installation. However, due to local public opposition and certain technical limitations, the Japanese government decided to cancel that project and instead opted to take all that land-based radar infrastructure and cram it onto a warship. This was the genesis of the ASEV program. It reflects a strategic shift from static defense to creating a mobile fortress that can patrol and protect Japanese waters from a distance. It is a clear response to the Anti-Access Area Denial, or A2AD, environment. For a quick update on the situation as we speak in 2026, the ASEV program is no longer just a blueprint. The Japanese government is moving forward full steam ahead. The keel for the first ship was laid back in mid-2025 at the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries shipyard in Nagasaki. And even more exciting, the keel for the second ship was just laid this past February 2026 at the Japan Marine United shipyard in Yokohama. According to the schedule, the first ship should be ready to be launched by late fiscal year 2026 or early 2027. This is incredibly fast considering the massive size and scale of the project. Now let's drill down into the core technology of this vessel. As I mentioned earlier, the biggest challenge right now is hypersonic missiles, and they aren't just fast, they are hypersonic glide vehicles, meaning they can glide and change direction mid-air, making it very difficult for traditional radar to calculate their trajectory. To counter this, Japan chose to install the AN SPY-7-V1 radar system, the most advanced solid-state radar from Lockheed Martin. This radar recently passed live target tracking tests alongside the U.S. Missile Defense Agency, or MDA, just this past March 2026. The unique thing about the SPY-7 is its extremely high sensitivity. It can detect and process targets with low radar cross-sections moving at incredible speeds in the atmosphere with pinpoint accuracy. It was designed specifically to track the evasive maneuvers of hypersonic weapons. When combined with interceptor missiles like the SM-6, which can destroy targets in their terminal phase, or the SM-3 Block IIA, used for taking out targets in space, it makes the ASEV the most comprehensive missile interception system Japan has ever had. Furthermore, looking ahead beyond 2030, the ASEV is slated to be among the first key vessels to be equipped with the next generation of interceptors like the GPI, or Glide Phase Interceptor. This is a historic joint development between Japan and the US, designed to destroy hypersonic missiles in their glide phase when they're cruising at high speeds in the upper atmosphere before diving down. And what's even more interesting, Japan also plans to install directed energy weapons or high-power laser systems, as well as electromagnetic railguns in the future. These energy technologies will be the answer to countering swarms of cheap kamikaze drones, as they have a cost per shot of only a few dollars and can fire continuously as long as the ship's generators are running. To give you a better picture of the immense scale and value of this project, I've prepared a brief spec sheet along with estimated costs. Let's take a look at what this piece of Japanese defense architecture looks like and how much it costs. From the table, the most eye-catching figure is undoubtedly the estimated cost of $2.5 billion USD per ship. $2.5 billion per vessel is no joke. It represents a massive investment, reflecting Japan's willingness to spend big to plug gaps in its air defense. And if we look at its size, a displacement of 12,000 tons, nearly 200 meters long, with a VLS configuration of up to 128 cells, it is significantly larger and carries more firepower than the Maya-class destroyers, which were Japan's most advanced warships until now. The increased number of cells means greater firepower. It can load Tomahawk cruise missiles to strike enemy missile launch sites from long range. This represents a major shift in Japanese military doctrine, moving from a strictly defensive posture to possessing a concrete counterstrike capability. Operationally, having two ASEVs in service will yield a crucial secondary benefit, unlocking Japan's existing fleet of 8 Aegis destroyers. Previously, Japan had to deploy Kongo, Atago, or Maya-class destroyers to constantly patrol the Sea of Japan, monitoring North Korean missiles 24/7. This caused wear and tear and pulled major surface combatants away from other missions. But when these two ASEVs take over as the primary rotating interception fortresses, the other destroyers will be freed up to fully execute their missions of deterring Chinese expansion in the southern island regions. Moreover, with the Cooperative Engagement Capability, or CEC, command and data link system, the ASEV can share real-time target detection data seamlessly with US Navy warships and F-35 fighter jets. It doesn't fight alone. It is the hub of the Allied integrated air defense system in the region. Another highly interesting dimension that isn't discussed as often is the human element in Japan's demographic crisis. Today, Japan is facing a hyper-aging society, leading to severe personnel shortages within the self-defense forces. But would you believe that the AESV, which is 1.5 times larger than the Maya class and approaches the displacement of a giant cruiser, operates with a crew of only about 240 personnel? That is incredibly low compared to large warships of the past. The answer is that Japan has packed the entire ship with highly advanced automation systems to reduce the human workload as much as possible. And impressively, this modern-day Yamato was designed with crew comfort as a priority. Personnel are provided with private cabins along with modern welfare facilities, creating a working environment intended to attract the younger generation to join the maritime service. This is a smart way to address the personnel crisis while simultaneously increasing combat efficiency. But hold on a second. Regardless of how invincible the AESV's specs look on paper, as a military hardware analyst, I have a point I'd like you all to consider. This issue is like the flip side of the coin when building a massive warship, the concentration of risk. Think about this. We're putting the most expensive radar, the best processing systems, and over 100 missiles into a single 12,000-ton steel structure. The question is, in modern warfare characterized by asymmetric tactics, how will this ship fare if it faces a swarm of tens or hundreds of cheap kamikaze drones that aren't trying to sink the whole ship, but are specifically aiming just for the SPY-7 radar arrays mounted on the superstructure? If the main radar is destroyed or damaged beyond use, this $2.5 billion warship could instantly turn into a blind, floating, sitting duck. This is a challenge navies worldwide are facing. Many countries are shifting their focus to the concept of building a large number of smaller, networked ships to distribute risk rather than building just a few giant ones. but Japan has chosen a different path. Betting on these two ASEVs is a highly intriguing strategic decision. How well will they be able to integrate these giant ships into the national air defense network to protect themselves from all-around threats? Having a radar that can track hypersonic weapons is one thing, but surviving in a sea full of dangers from all directions is an equally challenging issue. Ultimately, Japan's new ASEV destroyer program is the clearest reflection of the tensions in the Indo-Pacific region. It is a symbol of a relentless arms technology race. Japan has shown that it is ready to do whatever it takes, pouring in unlimited budgets to maintain the balance of power and protect its airspace. But the true test of this 12,000-ton monster won't be on launch day. It will be proven when it has to sail out and face real-world pressure in the open ocean. So, what do you all think about Japan's ASEV program? Do you think pouring money into building giant ships like this is the right answer to counter hypersonic weapons? Or is Japan just building an expensive sitting duck for the enemy to attack? Drop a comment below and let's discuss. I'm looking forward to reading all of your thoughts as always. If you enjoy this kind of deep dive military hardware analysis, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on the quality content I put together for you. That's all for today, and I'll see you in the next video.